One of the aspects of the language that's often neglected, especially if you're practicing a lot by yourself as opposed to with other people, is questions, both forming them and understanding them. Let's say if I'm sat here in the south of Spain and I don't have many people to practice with and I'm learning Irish, I could put in hours and hours and hours of practice doing all the methods we've talked about a lot here on the channel, speaking to myself, writing down the new words, listening to a lot of things, but I won't ever have someone asking me questions, and because I'm speaking by myself, I'll be able to chat about absolutely everything, except I won't be asking someone a question at any point. So it's important still to be able to quickly form a question. We've talked about questions in the different ways before. I'm going to leave a link down below for one or two of the videos I've made if you're not sure about forming a question, the different types of question, whether we're using question words such as cod, conus, caw, k, and so on, or whether we're going, as I call it, direct on the verbs. That'll be on will to, on yeanan to, on scraven to, and so on. So also we have the air in the past tense, we'd have the air for the past, but also in the conditional, in the copula, let's say, or watlat for those ones. But there's a lot of different variation, and when you really start to dig down into it, it can be actually tricky, the questions, the amount of different types of questions and tenses you can possibly have. So today we're going to go over them a bit by going through 6 sentences, as always on a Aistriú. I'm going to explain one or two little caveats in relation to the sentences, so please stick with me for those as I go through them before you pause and have a go yourselves. So here are the sentences. We've got who helped you, would you do a bit of work, did you find out what was going on, where does he be writing? So I've written it that way. I know, in Ireland you might actually say it in that way, even in English, but that's because it was said in Irish originally first. So I'm getting you to do the habitual. So being is going to have to be somewhere there. Where does he be writing? The habitual. Was it a big place? Be careful there. I don't want you to use air, okay? So I don't want you to just go, well, it would be this in the past tense in the copula. So I'll just change the bu to an air. Normally when we're doing it with questions in the copula, we'll do it a slightly different way. Little clue for you, aun, A-N-N is going to be in there somewhere towards the end of the sentence, okay? And last one, would you need anything else? Would you need anything else? Loads of ways of doing that one at the end. Okay, so those are your 6 sentences. So as always, please guys, take your time. Do not be rushing with these. If you need to come back tomorrow, the next day, the video will still be here. Don't worry. And really, use Fuckler.I. Use all your different resources. As I'm always saying, on a Aistriú, people have seen all the episodes will be sick of me saying it. But that is the key. That is where the benefit lies. If you just kind of watch this video and watch me explain it, you'll get some benefit, but very little compared to if you actually try it yourself. Write it down, pen and paper, try and break it down, try and come up with the alternative translations. With all these videos, with all these podcasts, you get as much out of it as you want to and as you're willing to put into it, I suppose. Okay, so let's go through it one by one. Firstly, I need to put back on my glasses. I realize there's no way I'll be able to see what I've written down without them. Who helped you? So for who helped you, a few different ways of doing it. The most standard way, and the way I do it, would be K a chari lat. K a chari lat. Other alternative ways, you could say Cén Duine instead of K's. That's which person. Like a lot of the question words in Irish, we can have a Cén alternative. So we could have Cén Dói or Cén Chuí. So Cén Dói we use more in Ulster. Cén Chuí in Connacht, that would be an alternative for how, like Cén Chuí a Will to, Cé Will to in Connacht. But as well as that, you could have Cén Tám for what time instead of Cahan, and so on. But again, there's a bit of a difference there, you know. Even if we look, you can maybe see that difference a bit clearer in between Cén Tám and Cahan. Okay, Cén Tám might be more so what hour, what specific time in the day. Cahan, you know, it could be like if I'm talking about when the Germans invaded Poland. Okay, I'm not going to say Cén Tám, it's going to be Cahan. Because a broader time, it's longer ago. I'm not talking about the specific minute or the specific hour. So be careful with those. But here, Cén Duine a chari lat, yeah, you can still use that, but I think K is a bit better. Okay, so we're always saying with these question ones, all the ones apart from call, what we're going to do is I'm going to put the question word first, a little a afterwards, and then just the sentence in statement form, in affirmative form. Okay, so I'm not really going to change anything in terms of the order there. So K plus a, and then I'm going to have the verb. If you want to think about it like that and it's easier, then you can do that. So carry is the root, so therefore past tense, who helped you. So I'm just going to throw on a little H. I'd also need that H anyway because I have the A there. So even if this was present tense, it would be Gaeilge Weekly Lat the United C still. Okay, the A is going to force the H. On to the next verb with these ones. Cunas a yin into a shin. How do you do that? And then the lat at the end, because we're always using the le for help. Whether we use carry or the alternative here, we can use quidgy. Quidgy used a bit more in Ulster, but absolutely fine. Don't be afraid to mix and match the dialects if you want to. So quidgy used in Ulster Irish. So K quidgy lat, again, that united C on the pronunciations. The main thing, people get stressed out about CH, guys. The main thing is just don't pronounce it the same or as strong as a normal C. So united a bit, take some of the edge off it. Okay, that's the main thing. Don't be too worried about the sound. It can even vary sometimes from word to word and broad and slender. Okay, so don't stress yourself out too much. Just make sure you're leniting it. You're not pronouncing it the same as a C or a K sound. Okay, so K Harry Lat for who helped you, as well as Kindina or Quidgy would also be acceptable there. If we're though, would you do a bit of work or a piece of work, let's say? We'll translate better here. So it's going to be Onyen fa pisa ibre. Onyen fa pisa ibre. So let's break this down. I think this is one where a lot of people might have been confident they had it right and then made one small mistake inside, and it could be a number of things. So firstly, Mochanílaigh, golden rule Mochanílaigh. What am I doing? Taking the route. Start modification, end modification. Change one thing at the start, one thing at the end. Jane, I change one thing at the start. That's going to be a H, like most of them. And then the ending as well. So for you would do, I'm going to put the fa. I can also, to make it easier, and especially in Connacht you did this a lot, I can just say Onyenhuch 2. Onyenhuch 2. Okay? Some speakers don't like that, but it's used loads in Connacht. It's the main form by native speakers in Connacht, even in Ulster to some extent. In Munster, you never hear that, never at all, because they always use the fused forms and have, so it's trickier grammar in that aspect. It's more simplified, more like English in Connacht and sometimes in Ulster as well. So you can use whatever is easier for you, but bear in mind some people don't like it too much. Okay, so sometimes, and you'll always get taught in a textbook and in different things online that it has to be the hin first person, fa second person. Then you have a bit of option on the hamish and adish, whether you want to do amish, adish, or muj, sheed. Trust me, you can do it whatever way you want. Don't be worrying about that or what other people are saying. So, yin fa, but then it's in a question, so I do the on. So people always say to me, oh, but it's air, isn't it, for the questions, the Mochanílaigh. That's just for the copula. Okay, so that'll be or watlat. And even then, as we're going to see later on, often we won't use that anyway. So air is just past tense, guys. If we forget about the copula and we're just talking about normal verbs, let's say like this, like the verb to do, even if it's an irregular, verbs where you have a conjugation, we're not using the is to make it, like ismatlam, then it's only the past tense that uses the air and the near. Present, future, and Mochanílaigh will always use the on and the ni. Okay, so on meach to, for would you be, on my to, will you be, on will to, are you, even though that's irregular, and then let's say lay to, did you read. Okay, so here the on is then going to force an aru. The aru always beats the shevu, so it's onyen fa, and that's the same with all the Mochanílaigh ones. So vech she, he would be, on meach she, for would he be. So in yin fa, a bit of work. Some people might have said quidge ibre. That doesn't translate great here. Quidge kind of indicates actually good amounts more so, like a part. So you'd say that for achud eleje, the other part of it, the rest of it. In other words, achud is moja, the biggest part of it. Again, you're hearing that CH sound there on chud because it's feminine. So I would use pisa, and then that's going to force the genitive. Uber is one of those words that comes up a lot in the genitive, so it's going to be ibra. Okay, on yin fa pisa ibra. Would you do a bit or a piece of work? Okay, because it's a piece of work. Or you can think about it, you're using a noun to describe another noun. So work is a noun, a piece is a noun. A piece of what? What type of a piece? It's going to be a piece of work. Okay. If we're three, stay with me. We're doing well here. This one's tricky. Did you find out what was going on? Did you find out what was going on? An mórtul mach cad a bhí ar siúl. An mórtul mach cad a bhí ar siúl. So this is a bit tricky that I suppose we're always thinking, I'm always teaching that, in the past tense with those ones that change a bit or use the on and the ni in the past tense, the 5 or 6 kind of super irregulars, let's say, there's 3 main ones to remember. So you'd have the verb to go, so it's going to be an yakitu. You'd have the verb to see. so it's on wakatu instead of hunnic or anything like that. It changes from the positive form. And the other, on yarnatu, okay, for do. But I always say, as well as that, you have the verb to be, but that from day one on rautu, so one less thing to kind of remember or put in that category, even though it is, but you probably already know that, so that's not an issue. And then, what's the other one? There is actually another one. It's for, but because it doesn't change much, it's not going from for to something completely different. It's for to on war to with the BH. Sometimes I don't mention it as one of those kind of super irregulars, and it doesn't come up too often, but it can come up for sure in ones like this. So we're still going to use the on. Equally, we'd say new war to for you didn't get. So it's using that more so present tense, question form, and negative form, even though we're in the past tense, okay, like the other super irregulars. So on war to mach is for find out. For find out or figure out, we're going to use the verb get with mach, okay? And again, the verb get can be used for a few different things. It's not just to get, to receive, but it can be, used a lot, even, to get in terms of to become. Sometimes we'll use Aistriú for that. I got excited. Often in modern Irish, we'll just say, for me, and then add on a little adjective afterwards. So in this case, on word so did you kind of get out or figure out, find out? And then we're not, you can imagine it as two different sentences. Once I get to the what, it's a different part. So if I was just saying what was going on by itself, which is actually a question in itself, I would say cad a bhí ar siúl. Again, going back to my rule earlier, and all these rules are in the video down below if you haven't seen it already, in terms of forming questions. So the question word ones, which the big C's, cad, cunas, cahan, and so on. I'm just saying the C, so cad in this case, a afterwards, and then the verb. So cad a bhí ar siúl. Okay? If you run ar siúl, something was on, so cad a bhí ar siúl, what was going on. So on word mach, cad a bhí ar siúl, did you find out what was going on? Nothing really else you could put in there. Cad a bhí ag tarlú as well. If we don't have any context for it, we could say, yeah, that works. What was happening? Of course, it depends on the context. If happening works in English, then ag tarlú will work as Gaeilge, but ar siúl is a bit more fluent, a bit more everyday, a bit more normal. Okay, it's one thing I definitely don't hear learners use enough, I would say, is ar siúl. Instead of just saying the game took place, or like you'd say in English, or the game was on, we often say in Ireland, on, full stop, bhí an cluiche ar siúl. Okay, for took place, for on, for going on. There was music on at the venue, bhí ceol ar siúl ag an nát. Okay, Iwer Chathair an sin, where does he be writing? So that's with the habitual. Cá means sé ag scríb. Where does he be writing? Cá means sé ag scríb. So cá is a bit of an exception in regards to the question words. We don't have a little a afterwards to kind of stop the vowels coming together, but also as well the cá forces an uru. So it goes directly into the verb and it forces an uru. Okay, so that's why here it's called mean to. Other examples would be cá ndéanann sí an obair, where does she do the work? Cá ndéanann sí an obair, where does she do the work? So in this case, I can almost forget about the question word. Okay, like I can, the cá here is very like the on. So an ndéanann sí an obair, does she do the work? Cá ndéanann sí an obair, where does she do the work? Because we have the uru and we don't have the little a in between. So therefore, with those ones, I always think it's easy. Just get the sentence in statement form. So there'll be he does be writing. So bíonn sé ag scríb. So therefore, just add the cá and the uru. Cá means sé ag scríb. So don't overcomplicate it. Don't try and flip the order like you would in some other languages or go scattergun approach. Just think bíonn sé ag scríb. Add the cá at the start. Cá means sé ag scríb. Same with a lot of stuff in Irish, guys. If you're adding a má for if at the start, people change around the whole sentence order as if it's something completely different. Don't worry. Chill out. It's fine. Just have the sentence in your head. So bíonn sé go maith gach seachtain, má bhíonn sé go maith gach seachtain if it is good every week. Okay, a lot of things you can just tag on at start or tag on at the end. They won't change the overall order, apart from some specific stuff, such as obviously the infinitive, the inversion, the lubbar yenu, and so on. The perfect tense would be another example, tá lubbar zaint agam, where the order is a bit different and it can kind of change depending on what you're saying. Ivercug, was it a big place? So this is a bit tricky, you guys. I brought this up not so much for you guys to get it right. If you have, fair play. It's going to be an áit war a bhí ann. An áit war a bhí ann. For was it a big place? But more so to explain this concept to you guys. So I often talk about the copula, how you should just base everything off, again, one base sentence, and you can change it from there. So if I've is mods or a, I can change that then to on mods or a, which works fine in the present tense, and But wads are a in the past tense positive, ní mods are a, and all these different ones by just changing the is and manipulating the sentence, the tense of the sentence, whether it's positive or negative, and so on. However, with these ones, with questions in the past and the future and also the conditional, we normally use the bhí ann, a bheadh ann, and a bhai ann. Of course, in the future, you have to do that because we don't have any future for the copula. So it's good to get in the habit of using that for the future, if nothing else. But also in the past and the present, we don't tend to say áit, war, a, or e. Okay, we tend to use this form. So it's actually not too bad because we're just using the bhí ann, the bheadh ann, the bhai ann, depending on the tense. So on áit, war, a bhí ann. Why is it war? Because áit is feminine. Again, always use one rule to prove the other. So if I know my gender rules well, and I know it's not an táit ever, well, therefore I know, okay, if it's never an táit, that means it's not masculine. That means it has to be feminine because we have no neutrals in Irish. So it has to be feminine. Therefore, all the adjectives riding on top of feminine nouns will take a H. Therefore, it's áit, war for a big place. An áit, war, a bhí ann, an áit, war, a bheadh ann, would it be a big place, and so on. If we're saying an cheann deireanach neo, would you need anything else? This is the way I've done it. An méach ein rodella ag tastal wech. An méach ein rodella ag tastal wech. So remember, you are not doing the action. When it's need, it's would that thing be lacking from you? You know, tá isca ag tastal wem, tá isca, so water is, it's always the thing you need that's doing the action, so it's different to English. You could also do this direct on the verb with tasty, that would be fine. You could also just not use tasty at all, an méach ein rodella wech, but I always think it's better to use tasty in some type of way to make it clear you're talking about need. If you kind of drop the need, or drop the tasty, it can kind of go into the category of being want, possibly. I would say agiri for want, some form of tasty for need. Keep it easy for yourself and just be able to understand the different forms if you hear them. Okay, but don't kind of confuse the two. So therefore, I think an méach ein rodella ag tastal wech, that's probably the easiest there. So again, would it be? So we're using the verb to be. So an méach, so I can think tá isca ag tastal wem, change that to bheadh isca ag tastal wem for my base sentence. An méach, same thing as we talked about earlier. It's an isca here, it's ein rodella, an méach ein rodella, and then ag tastal wem, ag tastal wet, and so on, depending on who it is. So an méach ein rodella ag tastal wech in this case. Would anything else be lacking from you? Okay, hopefully that makes sense, guys. You might have more alternative translations. I would say about 70 or 80% of the comments on a Aistriú with alternative translations end up being correct and right. So don't be afraid to leave a comment below or send me a message asking me, oh, I had this instead, is this right? Might be different dialectical stuff and so on, or just stuff I might have left out. There's loads of ways of, expressing the same idea in Irish or in any language. Okay, so don't be afraid to leave a comment down below, or any questions on anything I mentioned today or anything in relation to questions, just let me know and I'll get back to you in the next day or two. Míle buchas, guys, as bheith féchans an agran seo, je ag Aistriú, le rá me live, go hanlua ar fad, slán go fóill.